Welcome to Branding the Experience. We discuss ways how we can create environments where employees actually want to come to work and customers want to keep coming back. Brought to you by Bader Training and Consulting and Break Ice Marketing.
Here are your hosts, Ken Bader of Bader Training and Consulting and Heather Dahl of Break Ice Marketing.
To go
Right.
back to your Wells Fargo example, because I think and this may be an episode in and of itself, I used to talk about Wells Fargo as a positive brand example. And I've told this story before when I moved from the Midwest to California and I needed a new business banking relationship because I had worked with a small regional bank in the Chicagoland area. While I could still transact with them, I actually do. I don't go to branches very often, but as a business person, yeah, and I just had this example last week. If there's something that's really, really important, I don't want to listen to Muzak for 45 minutes. I want to
Right.
go in and talk to a live person and say, all right, I'm not just cashing a check. This is something that's serious, and I want to talk to a person face to
Make eye
face.
contact. Yeah.
Right. Right. So about 15 years ago, maybe more, when I moved to California, it's like, okay, I need to create a business banking relationship here as I move my business and my incorporation from Illinois to California.
hmm
And my first choice, and I will actually call them out, is Farmer and Merchants Bank. Have you ever heard of them?
I'm heard of them. I've never worked with them.
They're actually really their headquarters is here in Long Beach, California, where I live. They're, one of these hometown longtime banks. And I thought, because I like the idea of let's not go to the big guy.
hmm
Let's go to the smaller guy. And I could walk right over there. So I went into one of their main branches, and it's like I talk about with culture and service standards. I walked in and it was like I didn't exist. Yeah, and it's not like everybody in there was with a customer.
Right.
I mean, I walked in and I don't know if I was invisible, I had hair back then, so it wasn't that they hated bald guys, but one person sitting there diligently, looking at her piece of paper at the desk, there are tellers over there that aren't serving anybody, trying to just make a buck without actually doing any real work. Nobody's saying, "Hey, welcome in." Even from, all the way in the back, I would have been fine with you say, "Hey, welcome in. We'll be right with you." That would have been fine.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing. And I actually sat there looking at, brochures and things like that. For those of you out there that, understand sales, when somebody's in there looking at a brochure, that's called a buying signal. I was in there for at least a good 5 minutes and nobody acknowledged my existence. I walked out. And I
Wow.
said, "Well, I'm not opening an account here because if I can't get acknowledgement just by coming in, God forbid I really need help." And I walked one block down the street to Wells Fargo. Wasn't my first choice.
hmm
I walked in the door. I was just about to pick up a brochure. Personal banker came and said, "Hey, welcome. I'm Tony or whoever it is. How can I help you today?" And I said, "Well, I'm changing, my business to California. I need this, that, and the other things." Terrific. You know what? Let me get you to our business banker. He's actually with somebody right now, but if you have a seat, I will tell him you're here and you will be the next person. Can I get you a water or a cup of coffee or something like that?
Such a difference, huh?
And I'm like, they actually want me to be here.
Right.
And I
Right.
think I waited like less than 5 minutes and went in. And unlike your experience with Wells Fargo, the
Yeah.
guy said, "Oh, and didn't try to hard sell me on anything. It's like, you could do this. Here's another option. Here's another option. Here are the different options. Here are the different ways that they'll work. Whatever, depending upon how you're doing your business." He found me an option that worked best for me. And it's the options I still use for my business banking today. And to get into the brand associations, I remember back then very clearly watching their ads and reading their stuff that their brand approach, that their leadoff hitter was, we're a big bank. and I know I'm getting this wrong, the phrase and everything, but this is in essence what it was. We're a big bank that has a community bank feel.
Right.
Our branches, while it's a branch of much bigger conglomerate, our branches have the autonomy to feel like a community bank in their neighborhood. And that was the experience that I got. Now, fast forward, 10,
Well,
15 years, and I agree with you.
yeah.
I haven't experienced at Wells Fargo in a long time, not since before COVID. So it shows you how, even the best branding can go to crap if you don't keep
But
up with
I'll
it. But
say
go ahead.
I'm glad you said that because it's consistency across all channels.
Hmm.
Because he ended up opening an account at Wells Fargo just because, I don't want to go into a lot of details, but he wanted a student checking account where he didn't need to have his parent sign it. And there's not a lot of options. So, and local options. So Wells Fargo, Sam ended up calling back the next day, even though that was annoying. Normally I would be annoyed. So there wasn't a lot of other options. So I ended up making him an appointment and I went with him. Now that in-person
Did you hold his hand and say, here,
I did
here,
not.
little Jimmy?
I did not.
How much of a second mom are you?
I did not do
Yeah,
that.
maybe I
But
need a second mom. Can you make me some soup or
no one
something?
else is second mom. But the in-person experience was completely different. Now, if I had just had the in-person experience, I probably would have, obviously, I would never have had that negative experience over the phone. Two negative experiences over the phone, actually,
Mhm.
read called two different branches. So the in-person was completely different. It's more like what you said, although I think she did actually offer me water, now you say that. But she was standing there. We got there like a minute or two before our appointment. She was standing there waiting for us, the person that we had the appointment with hurried up and escorted us into her office. I think she did ask us if we wanted water, sat us down, brought in another seat because my daughter was with us. There was three of us. And so she had two seats in her office. There's, brought in a third one and, completely walked him through it. I just, sat there silently. And, this is between her and him, but it was a very good experience. So I think it's important, as far as going back to brand associations and your branding is that, and we've talked about this in other episodes, is to make sure that you're consistent across all channels. Because if you're not, if it's someone's first impression, one channel, and it's a negative experience, and they haven't had the experiences, they're going to turn them off. Like, I mean, it may have been an off day. When you went to that bank 15 years ago, it could have just been, who knows? I don't want to make excuses for him, but it may have been. But you got mad and left and opened an account at Wells Fargo instead. So they missed out. And
Mhm.
so, not to say we can't have off days, but you got to be very careful about making sure that there's consistency, across all channels among all your people. If you have an employee or a group of employees that aren't, you know, presenting your brand the way that you need it to be, that's a problem. I mean, we all have off days. There might, someone's sick, doesn't feel good, bad. But I mean, if it's consistently, that's a problem. They're representing your brand in a
Mhm.
way that could, start changing the brand association, or at least, among some people. So I think first impressions and also
Mhm.
reputation. Those are two things that are tied to brand associations as well. Yours was first impression, right?
Mhm. First
Um,
thoughts. Yep.
Right, right. But also In and Out for a lot of people is reputation. They're curious. They've never had In and Out. They're from Nebraska. I don't think there's In and Out in Nebraska, but
No.
they've
But there's White Castle, I think, which is
okay,
much better than In-N-Out.
okay. Well, see, you'd want to go to White Castle. Never been there,
Mhm.
but heard about it. So, or maybe you have been there. I don't know. I've never been there. So you hear about something, you see the long lines. It must be good if you see long lines, right? So you want to
Mhm.
try. It must be worth waiting in that line. So brand association, first impressions are important, but also you want to get that reputation because that reputation is what's going to bring people there too.
This has been Branding the Experience. Learn more about Bader Training and Consulting and Break Ice Marketing at www.btcinc.net/marketing.